Hey viewers! If you head onto my e-learning website, you realize that I have a very popular e-learning series called the Premium Courses, where every week you get video lessons uploaded covering a wide topic and genre of photography. Now, one of the new series that we started not too long ago is called Artistic Photography, where we learn how to integrate art into photography. And we have many lessons there now, and one of them is called Cubism, where I try to integrate Cubism of art into photography itself. So today I'd like to share with you this video that was broadcasted not too long ago so that you learn how to use Cubism in photography. Enjoy! And this episode, this painting here, by William M. Halsey. William was a painter from USA, Carolina, and he painted this. And what I like about this particular painting is that the Cubism effect that he has there. Cubism was an avant-garde painting style developed by Pablo Picasso and George Braque. More on these two painters later on in our coming episode. If you really look at Cubism, what's so interesting about it is that it's a little bit like a collage where the subjects are fragmented into angled squares and rectangles looking like this. And if you look at William Halsey's two pears and a knife painting, it has a little bit of that effect, but there were no distortion on the knife or the pears. So it made Yi Chong and I think that, hey, perhaps we could use gel to light up or create something similar, inspiring fine arts and paintings to photography. Let's start. Okay, our box of gels, Yi Chong. Various colors. I realized that there are two ways to do this. The first way is to get pre-cut gels, take different colors that we have, and then get a panel like this, remove this opaque one, and then we're going to stick a transparent one, and then we're going to cut gels and stick it to this panel, matching William Halsey's pattern there, which means that there is a light source coming from the right hand side of the painting. If you really look at this, there's a shadow there. And then have a gel panel with pre-cut pattern looking like this, and the light goes through that gel panel and get an effect. That's way number one. That means we light up through the gel. Way number two is this. We get a glass. As you can see, I've traced with marker pen. And then what we do is that we stick the gel to this, forming a pattern. But instead of lighting up this panel, we put this directly in front of the lens. That means the camera sees through this like a filter. So we have two options. So Yi Chong, which one you think it's a better option?
That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I thought so too. Because if you really learn the e-learning of flash photography, advanced flash photography, we actually did this first version. If you go that version, you need to have the flash and the gel more precise and closer to the pears and knife. That will need a little bit more work. So viewers, we're going to try the second version where we stick the gel directly to a glass panel, get a thin glass like this, which we got off the shelf, and then going to place it in front of the pears and knife. And speaking of pears and knife, I've got a better idea how you can have pears and knife and learn something about fine arts that I want to share with you this. Let's go to the set. A red piece of paper, an almost blue plate, a wooden handle knife, and the pears I'm going to use. At this point, you're probably thinking like, what the hell, Andrew? Why are you so lazy and such a stingy man to be using almost rotting pears? This is where I want to teach you a concept about fine arts that painters have for the longest time. Memento mori, which loosely translates from Latin to English that remember you have to die. If you look at painters throughout the centuries, they like to use this theme of skull, rotting fish, dying plants to remind viewers that nothing is perpetual. There was a time that painters paint about gods and human touch by gods, but memento mori is a concept that painters want to show you that nothing is perfect and perpetual, that you will die. And this is, viewers, what I want to teach you, that you don't have to use perfect pairs. And there, you learned something new today of how integrating fine arts to photography. That memento mori, that your still life subjects will die, and you are actually in a way immortalizing this before the death of the pairs. Enough of that memento mori. What I plan to do is to have a light source that is coming down at an angle on the right hand side of the pairs, creating a shadow mimicking what William painted. And that is not good enough, because I realized that the colors that William used looks gel. They are colored light. So what I'm doing here is to have a green color gel attached to the barn door here. This will give an effect of green color to this whole setup here. So before I even worry about the color, the concept that Yi Chong and I had is not to gel the square and the cubism that William painted, but instead we're gonna put a glass plane in front of here, which I've traced where to stick color gels. I'm gonna cut this off shortly and superimpose this where the lens and the camera is. Come closer and play the angle of how I'm gonna be shooting. So this is gonna be pasted and cellophane taped with gel, and that will form a superimposition of the squares that we see in William's cubism. So what's left now is to figure out what to cut and what color, because we are dealing with additive color, because light and colored lights work on an additive color model. If you're an all access subscriber, head on to Colors in Photography and you can learn about these two lighting model really well, where dyes and paints work on subtractive color model, whereas light work with additive. And when it comes to light overlapping each other, the color changes. That is why you have colors becoming black and darker and colors becoming lighter. So let's match it to William's photo and cut our gels now. This is the exact patterns matching to what I can see in William's painting. Because when I'm inspired by a painting and I try to replicate in a photo, I try to get the pattern as close as I can get. But this is tricky. When William painted this, it was subtractive color model, and he was painting based on his creative inspiration of how he wanted the cubism and the color to be. But for me, and using lights, I may not get that exactly. The colors will not turn out exactly as how William did it. But that said, this is the creative difference that we can have, because we're dealing with light and additive color model. So putting this exactly like this, we'll be able to match the pattern. So I'm going to mount my camera here and look through this and do micro adjustment of the C-stand to get an exact replication of the pattern that we see here. And then we're going to turn on the light, and I presume we just need one light source. So I'm going to turn on the light with the modeling lamp and move it around until I get the shadow that is exactly like how William painted this. And looking at the angle that I have and making micro adjustment, I can see that the pattern almost matches exactly of how William painted this. So let's go through my flash here. I'm going to turn on the flash here, set this to the lowest manual power. This will trigger that. When this goes off, it will strike that. So this is called optically triggering my studio flash. If you don't have a studio flash, you can go with a hot shoe flash. But remember, most of the artists like to use a bowl, which I have in front of here, a bowl and a barn door. I only affix the barn door here simply because I want to gel the light. So what do I want to achieve here? If you head on to our Colors in Photography, you realize that the darker the camera, the brighter the light you need to light it up, and that will give you a more intense saturated color, because colors will only etch and form if you're dark enough. So which means I'm going to use a low ISO, which is ISO 100, high f value, f11 or f16, and then use a higher shutter speed. So I've got that all in place now. I'm shooting at f11, ISO 100, and the shutter speed of 200, and I'm going to my camera to do... Crap, I just walked into this and I have to redo the setup again because I just bumped into my tripod. Okay, I hope I don't bump into my tripod again. What I was trying to tell you is that you have to do two treatments to your camera now. The first one, I'm going to apply color filters. I don't think that I can pull it off with just a normal plain white light setup, which means I've got to go to my white balance, heading on to my ABGM shift here, and make sure that the camera's filter, the color filter, what I'm doing here is to apply a color filter before I save it to a JPEG. I'm making it a little bit more magenta and bringing my white balance in Kelvin right down to 3000. So essentially what I'm doing here is to add magenta and blue at the same time, while this light casts a green light. And when the camera looks through this, I may get a different kind of color setup. So I'm going to move my focus point and make sure that you're focusing inside the pear and the knife, not this layer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift this up high enough, focus this. Okay, I'm done. So I'm going to flip my focus to manual and then put this down. Okay. My pattern still overlaps well enough. The reason I'm doing this is that so that I'm focused on the subject, which is the pears and the knife, and not the color filter. So take that shot. This is what we get. Pretty interesting, isn't it? But looking at this, the colors that we get is not exactly the same. That's it. We'll never get it exactly the same of how William painted this. But I realized one thing we can greatly improve on. If you look at the knife, it looks completely black at the metal there, and at the same time, both of the pairs look dark. And I know if I were to bring up the brightness of the camera, which means that I reduce the f value or increase the ISO, I would just water down the color. The only one way to do this is to make the shot brighter by adding one more light at the back. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this camera to timer, go on behind there, hold a flash at an angle, make sure that I light up the knife, and things are going to look brighter. Let's try that now. So I've got this flash to trigger optically remotely now, bring the power up to 1/16. Whenever you learn from my tutorial, I don't want you to worry about the power of the light. Try it on your version, and then you realize that if it's too bright, just bring down the power. If it's too dark, just increase the power. So I'm zooming this to about 85 millimeter. Click this, come over here, aim this to the knife at an angle. Okay, that didn't work out. Looks like my flash was not aimed correctly. I'm going to try better. So you notice that it's not much improving on the lighting on the knife. I'm going to do a top-down and angled version like this. Finally we got it. And viewers, this is William Halsey's original painting. And this is our inspired version of how a photographer would take it. With the Cubism concept intact, but the colors, our inspired version of additive colors. Oh hey, before I go, I want you to try out this version, your own version. You don't need to be using pears. You can use rotten fish. You can use a sword, whatever it is. Head on to Google and then look for Memento mori in paintings and see what it inspires you. And at the same time, try the other version which I didn't do, which is to have a second light source, to have a gel panel, and see how that effect that you get. If you want to find out how you do this, if you're an All Access subscriber, head on to my e-learning advanced flash and look for this lesson where we show you how we can get gel-induced colored lights like this without using paint and makeup. And you still get that pattern, just cut Cubism patterns like this. Oh, speaking of which, I did another version. Not gonna tell you how I did this, but this was what I get. So it looked a little bit like Monet's pointillism plus Pablo Picasso's Cubism. So viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you do, head on to my e-learning website here and support my premium courses. And even better, try out our all access account where you get premium courses, and also at the same time you can enjoy all the 20 over e-learning titles that we have here. So hurry, support me so that I can continue making YouTube tutorials like this free for you so that you can learn from the comfort of your home. See you soon.